Last time, we took a look at Jak and Daxter: The Precursor Legacy, which is one of my favorite games on the PlayStation 2. Today, we're going to be looking at its sequel, Jak 2. Great title, I know. I'm going to be looking at the HD version, and it changed a lot from the first game. Let's go.
You may have noticed the differences from the first game right at the title screen. Jak and Daxter has bright, vibrant colors and a catchy little beat saying, "Adventure awaits!" However, Jak 2 has grays and blues and industrial-looking backgrounds with barely any music, and it's saying, "Edgy." When the game begins, you're treated to a cutscene where Jak, Daxter, Samos, and Kira are trying to figure out this strange precursor artifact that they lugged all the way from Gol and Maya's citadel, which I find kinda weird, because their citadel was far, far to the north. Anyway, Jak pushes a button, some preset coordinates get locked onto, a giant monster comes out of a portal called the Rift Gate. Jak pushes the same button again and they go through the portal and get separated. When Jak and Daxter arrive in this strange city, a bunch of the guards show up and Daxter runs away to go be in his own spin-off, and Jak gets knocked out. Cut to 2 years later, where it is clearly showing Jak being tortured in a game meant for kids by having dark ego pumped into him artificially by a man named Baron Praxis and his lieutenant Errol, because Jak has to be a super weapon to fight against these strange creatures called metalheads. So they leave Jak alone, and Errol says this very sensually,
"I'll be back later."
Pretty sure he's got a thing for Jak. Then Daxter shows up because his spin-off didn't do too well and is here to save Jak. Now, remember in the first game, Jak was a silent protagonist, but I guess after being tortured for 2 frickin' years, he would have had some kind words to say.
"I'm gonna kill Praxis!"
Honestly, I was so in disbelief at that line that the next thing that happened barely fazed me. That just looks cool to me, except for the part where he almost killed his friend. I swear if this game had any blood, it'd be rated M in an instant. After escaping prison, the main point of the story is originally to go find Baron Praxis, but you meet this old man named Kor shortly after the escape, and you have to save him and this kid he's with from some guards. And Kor tells you about Torn, which is the leader of a rebel group against Baron Praxis. Kor tells Jak to ask Torn to tell him about this mysterious man called the Shadow, and it takes a while before you get to meet him because it's a pretty big twist. Therefore, now, your whole role in the game is to prove yourself to the Underground, which is the name of the rebel group, and meet all of these different kinds of characters. Alright, y'all ready for this? There's Crew, who is just tons of fun. Sig, this badass dude with a weapon called the Peacemaker. Fun fact, Sig is voiced by Phil Lamar, who is the voice of Vamp in Metal Gear Solid 2, and Carver from The Weekenders. There's Ashlyn, who is the Baron's daughter but is a spy working for the Underground. Vin, a scientist who thinks everyone is out to kill him. Tess, a bartender working for the Underground to spy on Crew. Brooder, a lurker who wants Jak's help to save other lurkers from becoming slaves. Onin, a wise old woman who tells Jak all about the hero Mar. Pecker, Onin's interpreter since Onin can't speak or chooses not to. I don't know. Kira, who you know from Jak and Daxter, the love interest mechanic. And finally, Samos the Sage, who you know as the jolly green short guy. Alright, now the story is divided into thirds, with every third ending with a boss against Baron Praxis. The first third ends with all the stuff I just explained, and you go up to Baron's palace and sneak in with Vin's help. You go to the roof of the building and spy on the Baron and discover that he is giving barrels of eco to the metalheads. This information is what lets you meet the Shadow. And hey, look, it's Samos the Sage, except looking a lot younger, but still has the same attitude. So after that confusion, young Samos sends Jak to go retrieve something from outside the city walls, and when you get to the area, you realize that it's actually Samos' hut from the first game, and come to realize that all of Haven City is actually their future. Another key point in the story that I nearly forgot to mention is when Crew sent you to go enter a racing competition, and when you go talk with the mechanic of your vehicle, she's hidden behind a curtain, and you have no idea who it is.
It's Kira.
She gives you the hoverboard, which you need for certain mission, and it helps Jak realize his dream of being Tony Hawk. The second third is all about going to see Onan and Pecker and discovering more about the hero Mar. Remember that kid from the beginning of the game with Core? Onan believes that the kid is actually the heir to the throne and related to Mar and has his blood in him. So, to get the kid on the throne, they have to find the tomb of Mar and have the kid pass the trials to prove he is related. To find the tomb though, Jak has to go and find certain relics in the jungle and put them into this giant magnifying glass, which destroys the statue of Mar, and you find out that the tomb has been in the center of Haven City all along. Cut to the entrance to the tomb, where the kid will have to go in and face the trials to prove he's related to Mar. One problem, the kid is too young. So before the door closes, Jak and Daxter dive in and do the trials themselves and go for the precursor stone, which is this giant green gem. But the Baron shows up and is like, "No, that stone is mine," and the second boss battle begins. When you beat him, he gets a stone anyway, and you find out that Torn is the one who gave away where you were because the Baron threatened to kill Ashlyn for the information. His own daughter. Now, most of the underground are locked up in the fortress where you started the game, and when you rescue everyone, well, you find the Samus the stage that does recognize you from the first game. Apparently he's been in there since the beginning of the game, where you start out, and that information just makes me feel bad on a second playthrough. Alright, the final third of the story, which can be summed up pretty quickly. Crew wants you to throw the final race and let Errol win, but Jak isn't going to let that happen, and when you go to the race, Errol says,
I'm more than just a win, eco freak. I want you.
Alright, that's it. I'm calling it. Errol has a thing for Jak. Too bad he dies after the race by driving into a bunch of barrels of eco ore which make him blow up. Goodbye, Errol. We hardly knew ye. After that, Crew wants you to go down into the sewers for everyone's favorite kind of mission, escorting. This mission is by far the worst. More on that later. You have to escort these 3 guys who are bomb experts to help you find the Heart of Mar gem. But what Jak doesn't know is that he's actually being used to help steal the gem, which is actually the big red button Jak pressed at the beginning of the game. And Crew wants it to use it for a giant weapon that will be used on the Metalhead nest. Jak obviously has to stop this from happening, otherwise Metalheads will come swarming out. So you go to the weapons lab, kill Crew, which nobody is really sad about, and blow up the weapons lab. The final major plot point is that you find out that Core, this old man, is actually the Metalhead leader in this cutscene that seemed to glitch out on me. And he takes it off to the nest, which Jak follows him into, but not before a bunch of Metalheads come storming out, and one of them even kills Vin, which you only hear about over radio, which I think is kind of unfair. Also, Baron Praxis tries to take Core on and gets immediately killed. So, you kill Metalhead leader Core, and there's a cheat to do this easy. If you go to the cliff right behind you, where you start the fight and do a high jump and spin, you can get on a little rock sticking out and do it again, and you can get on top of the cliff where you can just keep shooting Core, and his minions can't get you. This version of Core was the same thing you saw that appeared in the Rift Gate at the beginning of the game. You also discover that the child is actually a young Jak, which means that Jak was actually born in Haven City, and raised by Samus the Sage, and then they went through the Rift Gate at the end of it, and went to the islandish area where I'm guessing Jak met Kira and Daxter, which is weird, because Kira calls Samus Daddy all the time, so did Samus adopt her after arriving from the future? Anyway, the story ends with Daxter overtaking Crew's bar and throwing a party, and Samus and Pecker tease that there's still something special about Daxter and Jak. But again, you'll have to wait until Jak 3 to find out. Jak and Daxter, the Precursor Legacy, had a very Banjo-Kazooie, Mario 64 vibe to it. It was a platformer with collectibles. Jak 2? Grand Theft Auto. You can't make that shit up. The gameplay consists of running or driving around a city full of pedestrians whom you can run over, running away from cops, shooting things, and talking to people to do missions for them. To explain the guns, there's the red one that goes boom, the yellow one that goes ping, the blue one which is basically a machine gun, and the purple one which shoots an electric ball that kills all enemies near each other. Other than that, the moves from Jak 1 are all back for your melee attacks. And funnest thing to do is to get out your yellow gun, jump in the air, spin attack, and shoot. Oh yeah, there's also the precursor orbs hidden in among the world, but I never bothered to find them all because all they do is unlock little cheats or concept art, which I think is cool, but once you beat the game, you don't really have a reason to play anymore. Like I say, I play games for the story, and this game has an amazing one with time travel. But once it's beaten, there's no reason to come back and play it again unless you want to find the precursor orbs and 100% the game, or if you want to play the story over again. I said I would explain the escort mission a bit later, and that time is now. Basically, you have these 3 guys you have to escort, and they all have their own life bars. And if you let one of them die, you have to start all over again, and listen to the same lines of dialogue on repeat. There's no way to know where the metalheads are going to come from on your first playthrough of the mission, so you do it and get a bit further every time you start over while listening to the same thing over and over. Also, this game does a very stupid thing where they do not give you invincibility frames, so if you get hit by an enemy and another one tries to hit you, you're gonna get hurt. Could you imagine if Super Mario Bros. Didn't have invincibility frames? You would lose your mushrooms and then die immediately after. Finally, all enemies in this final third of the game do 2 little bars of damage to your health, so that's 4 hits on Jak. 4 hits and you're dead. And when there's no invincibility frames, it's very easy to die. Naughty Dog also decided that checkpoints aren't a thing in this game, which isn't a good thing. When it comes to graphics, I am looking at the HD edition in this review, but like Jak and Daxter 1, it is a good looking game, just way more bleak and kind of dull. Where's all the color? I know there's some in Haven Forest, but still. I mean, I'm sure it's because Baron Praxis has taken over, so it wants you to feel depressed because it's a shitty city, but I really don't like it. The character models look great though. Very expressive, but a lot more dialed down than in the first Jak and Daxter game, with more subtle animation reactions, which is a good thing. The only part that glitched out for me too was when Core got all black-faced in that one cutscene. Other than that, the game ran smoothly with no slowdown at all and just fun to play. When it comes to music, it doesn't exist. And if it does, it's not memorable at all, it's just there for the atmosphere. I guess some boss battles have some cool music, but again, nothing I'd really remember.
Jak 2 is one of those games that I didn't necessarily grow up with. I did have a version of it, but it was scratched, and some missions wouldn't even let me leave Haven City, so I just kind of threw it away and moved on to Jak 3. And I was really confused. Don't ever do that. It's like starting with Metal Gear Solid 4 first. Anyway, the game story is great if you care about these characters and you like time travel, which I do. A lot. The gameplay has changed completely from the first game, which isn't necessarily bad, just different, but it did put me off of Jak 2 for a long time. However, I am glad I played it all the way through because it is important to the overall story of Jak and Daxter, which is one of my favorites. Anyway, I hope you all have an amazing day or night whenever you're watching, and as always, take care. Edgy!